4, 3.
We'll do it live!
Now we're live! Erin Kennedy. The general craziness of it, the impact on your life.
We have gone through so many stories and we said, you know what? This should not be kept to the two of us. Hi, Megan.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I am so happy about today. This is like one of my
Yes.
favorite days. Yep.
Yes. You know, I'm with you there. Absolutely. Hey, real quick bit of housekeeping. Please like and subscribe. We have a great interview coming up. This is something you will definitely want to share with a lot of your friends. I feel like this woman's story is so powerful and really, I'm so glad she's sharing it with us today, Megan.
Yeah, it's so important. So we're going to talk to Jen Herrera today, a very good friend of mine, someone who many of you probably recognize from TV. She's worked in Miami for almost 20 years, which is crazy to even say. We worked together 15 years ago, last time we were on camera together. But in the meantime, Jen had suffered with something called breast implant illness. And I hadn't even heard of it before when she started texting me and saying, Megan, I think my implants are doing something they shouldn't be. Like, I don't feel right. And I remember thinking, I never heard of this. Like, okay. But Jen's here today to tell us the story because indeed that was the case.
Jen Herrera. Jen, thanks for being with us. Megan has, I mean, first of all, as a woman in a very competitive, very image-driven industry, this is a story that I'm actually seeing in many, many headlines right now with celebrities and everywhere. So thank goodness for you sharing this right now.
You know, when I first started talking about it, people were like, you're crazy, or you're like a super granola, like hippie, like, you know, you're just, and I'm like, okay. And I always say, this was my experience. When you put all the pieces together, it makes sense. And I will admit, it's very validating now, almost 5 years later, because it is a hot topic and huge celebrities are backing it up, which, you know, people tend to believe celebrities, you know?
Yep.
And yeah, and I lived it and I felt compelled to tell my story. You know, we're used to being the storytellers with what we do for a living, but I felt compelled to share this one.
Yeah.
So,
and
so
I
what is
remember
that story? When and why did you decide to get breast implants?
I was always uneven, you know, and it really bothered me as a teenager, as a 40-something-year-old woman. Now I'm like, who cares? Like, it is what it is. You know, it matters, right? I was always uneven, and that bothered me. I remember I had to put a pad, you know, like a pad in my bra on one side and not the other. And then I started interning in television very young, at age 18. And I remember seeing myself on camera and thinking that it just didn't look proportioned. I think it's important to add that I was on camera in Miami and I lived in Miami, and there's a little different pressure, added pressure, I think, to look a certain way in Miami. And I remember thinking, gosh, it would just be so much better if my boobs were bigger. I would look better. I would look more proportioned. And this was a time, guys, when I don't know if it was like this where you guys grew up, but at 18 years old, boob jobs in South Florida were very common. I mean, you graduated high school, you got a boob job or a nose job. Like, that's kind of where it was. I think about it now as the mother of a now 14-year-old daughter, and I'm like, heck no. But somehow I convinced my parents, and they were strict. You can ask Megan, they're still strict.
so strict, yes.
And somehow I convinced them. And the summer, and after that first internship, before my first year of college, spring break between, you know, of my freshman year of college, I got a boob job at 18 years old.
Did you like your fake boobs?
I loved my fake boobs.
I love them so much.
I loved them. I mean, I could wear it. It was a joke. I would wear a tube top every chance I had, you know, because you don't have to wear a bra. They just like sit up and
they just stay there.
And they weren't huge. They weren't, you know, like super like inappropriate. They were just, you know, they fit my body well. I absolutely loved them. I loved how I looked on camera when I went back for an internship the next summer. I was like, oh, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like. And, you know, I know there's like a stigma with plastic surgery, like, oh, a woman's not confident or whoever's not confident, and that's why they did it. I'll admit it wasn't that. I fortunately, it wasn't a confidence issue with me. It was more of, I know what I want. I want to be on television. I know what I want to look like. I know what's pleasing to the eye, and that was it. And yeah, they were fantastic until they weren't.
I have a question for you, Jen. Do
Yeah.
you think, before we talk about the weren't part of it,
Yeah.
do you think you would have had the success in the Miami TV market that you had without them?
No, I don't.
Think you would have gotten an actual job without them?
I do think I would have gotten an actual job. I don't know that I would have. My career, I rose very quickly in my career, and I still do, but I had an incredible work ethic, which served me well. However, I can admit now that my first big on-air role was as a traffic anchor, and I don't know that I would have gotten it that soon, maybe, if I didn't look a certain way.
Well, and just for everybody watching, a traffic anchor is like a meteorologist, always at the wall. So it is a full body shot, and you're standing sideways, you're standing so it matters.
It does. And at that time, so that was the early 2000s. And if you looked around on at least the highest rating show at the time, that's what they had up there.
Oh, yeah.
And you could tell what everybody was trying to replicate. And, it was what it was. And I'm more aware of what it was now. But I think I was aware. I was aware then.
And that was okay. Because you had a goal that you wanted to achieve, and you knew that in that moment in time, whether right or wrong of the comment on the industry, that's what you felt you needed to do to get where you wanted to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get a boob job and then they're going to put me on TV. It was more of, okay, no, this is what I want for my career. And I want to be a total package, not just like physically. Like, I want to be smart. I want to work hard. But this is going to look better on TV. And shallow as that may sound, I don't know, right or wrong, it was what it was. And I don't regret getting a boob job. I mean, I went through some stuff because of my boob job, but I don't regret it because it's top. My path would be very different just altogether if I hadn't gotten them done. Yeah.
That's really interesting to hear. So clearly you enjoy them. That's great. And the way that I understood your story was that you started experiencing some health issues that you were not ascribing to the implants, right? And maybe there was part of you that didn't want to think that there maybe could be an association.
No, like my implants, Erin, never even crossed my mind. So I'm trying to remember. So like it was my early 30s, like probably 32, 33. I was anchoring the morning show, and I used to work out really, really hard. And it felt like all of a sudden, like my joints were like really achy, like my wrists, like just to like touch my wrists, like would feel bruised. Same with my elbows. When I would get out of bed in the morning, I would look like an elderly person, like kind of like hobbling because everything hurt all the time. I had horrible rashes like on my hands, like, and they were welts, like so red, they were purple, if that makes any sense. I had like a butterfly red on my face if I didn't have my makeup on. There were so many things. And so I attribute it to like being tired or working out too hard. And I mean, it just was, my elbows were always like super, super red. So this went on for a long time. And, at the time my kids were little. They were like 2 and 3 or 3 and 4. And so you know how that goes when you're chasing toddlers around, they're 20 months apart. I'm working full time. It was like, okay, yeah, this will go away. Or yeah, I'm tired because I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Or yeah, I'm sore because I work out. And I actually went to the dermatologist, and I think I talked to you on the way, Megan.
You did. It's on the way after. Yep.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. That conversation was a tough one. To ask about Botox because I was like, oh, and he looked at me and he looked at my hands and he's like, well, let's a biopsy. Let's see what this is. I was like, what? I was just here for some Botox. And I had been told by a doctor before it was hives or I was just stressed out, they'd given me all these ointments to use. And he did the biopsy. They did some blood. No, they didn't do blood work yet. It was the biopsy first. And they said it was presenting. It could be lupus. And I was like, what? Make a very long story short, had a ton of tests done, and they said it looked like something. It presented almost entirely as an autoimmune disease called dermatomyositis, which if you Google dermatomyositis, you will understand why I barely could get out of bed because it is incredibly frightening. And it's an autoimmune disease that attacks your skin and your muscles. My muscles weren't the problem. It was my joints and obviously my skin. I went on Plaquenil, which is a medication used to treat malaria. I had to get a colonoscopy and endoscopy, every single test that you can possibly imagine. And then I still wasn't feeling better, even after like all of this stuff, taking this really serious medication. I was like, you know what? I've got to figure something else out. In the middle of this, I started working with a dietitian, nutritionist, and things started to improve a little, but not 100%.
If you guys, let me just say, I can remember talking to you, Jen, during that time. First, she would tell me that she couldn't open like jars and stuff, and that she was stopping CrossFit because she just didn't feel like she could handle it anymore. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's a bummer, And then I got that phone call. And I was one of the people Googling dermatomyositis. And I'm like, oh God, my best friend. Like I was like up here in Chicago. She was down in Miami and she was so upset and worried. And I was so upset and worried. And then she did such great things on your own, Jen, like with the nutrition, with all that stuff. But it wasn't enough.
No. So it did. I made the decision that I was going to go off the medication because the medication wasn't working. I couldn't in my mind think, okay, I'm going to keep taking this medication that could make me go blind. When it's not, I had to get my eyes tested regularly. Like it was a thing, like it was a thing. And so I cleaned up my diet completely. I remember, Megan, you came to visit. I'm like, we can't go out to eat. Like you have to come over and eat. I made like salmon and avocado salad because I was like, I'm on a mission to fix myself because I don't know what else to do.
Jen, can I ask one quick question? Don't implants though have a shelf life? Was there not one of those doctors who would, because I know very little about implants, but I thought that was part of it, that most people still have to get them removed at some point.
So the shelf life is 10 years. So they'll tell you, you should replace your implants at 10 years. By the time I took mine out, they had been in me for 18 years. However, I will tell you, through this journey, I know women who've had their implants for 6 months and they start to have a reaction.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it depends on the woman, Erin. I think it depends on their situation. I think I had my implants. I was in my 30s at this point. I was raising 2 little kids. I was working crazy hours, and like my autoimmune system was going, okay, I can keep fighting your implants, or I can fight exhaustion, or I can, help you with exercise. Like, your plate, you get too full. And I think that my body just literally started attacking itself. And this is kind of like going off in a different direction, but it's a lot of the thought process was silicone implants were the only dangerous implants, but even a saline implant has a silicone shell. So you're still getting that chemical into your body, because what happens with an implant, your body almost builds like it's a capsule around the implant. So it's literally attached to the silicone shell, even if the implant is saline. Yeah.
So when did you realize that it might have been your boobs?
So when I was working with that nutritionist and dietitian, I was off all of the meds, and I was feeling good, not 100%, but I was feeling good. And she called me one day, and my implants got like lumpy. Like that's what happens when your implants get old. Like it literally felt like rippled. And I was like, my husband's name is Jason. And I was like, I think I need to redo my implants. Like it's time. They're old and we're not having any more kids. And then, I think it's time. So we had been having those conversations. And then my nutritionist called me. She's like, Jen, I just came across something. She said, have you ever thought about removing your breast implants? And I was like, that's really weird, because my husband and I were just talking about, my implants or whatever. And I started doing research, and I started reading all of these women in the testament. And there wasn't a lot then. Like I had to like really, really dig. And I was just like, this is it. Nothing else made sense. Like you could not eat cleaner than I ate. I was doing yoga and all that stuff, which I really don't like. You know what I mean? Like there was nothing else. I was staying out of the sun, which was one of the things I had to do. And I made an appointment actually with my best friend. We both went in for a consultation, and like 2 months later, my implants were out. That was it.
And how did you feel?
Happened?
Like if someone told me this, I wouldn't believe them. I always say that because I wouldn't. I'll never forget driving home from the procedure and being in my husband's truck. And like, when you go to I have a gym membership, those little tags that you used to swipe, I don't know if they still have them, like when you go to the gym.
Yeah.
I remember I was all like out of it, and hearing like vivid, like just clearly the tag, like hitting where the steering wheel was. And I remember thinking to myself, like on the list of symptoms and stuff, it was like, your hearing's muffled, your hearing's not as good. And I was like, no, that's not one of mine. I just have all this other stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can hear so much more clearly. Like, and that was the ride home. And I can't even tell you how many countless women have sent me pictures right after their removal where like the whites of their eyes had been like yellow. And literally the day they get home or the next day, it's clear.
That's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And I was very fortunate, like within a matter of months, like I was good. Like when I open jar, every time I open a jar, I think to myself, thank God. Like I couldn't crawl on the floor and play with my kids. Like it was this whole process for me to be able to like get down on the floor, draw hopscotch. It was awful. Like, so when I work out, when I do anything now, I'm like, I can't believe I lived like that for that long. Cause it's crazy. Great.
Well, and now you're using your story to be an advocate and to raise awareness. And you have a wonderful book that's out. Are Your Fake Boobs Making You Sick? What a powerful story and what a great way to help other people, Jen.
Yeah, I felt compelled. I felt like I had to share it. I knew I wanted to write something eventually. When I was going through it, I didn't write anything down at all. But I knew I had to share this story because if it took me that long to figure it out, I didn't want anyone else to have to go through what I went through to have to figure it out. Mm-hmm. It's a very quick read. It's very personal. It's my story. I always say, Erin and Megan, like I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor. I'm a storyteller. And so this is my story. This is what I went through. If a woman out there is battling certain health things and no doctor can figure it out, because that's the point where I was, no one could figure it out, then they should consider taking out their breast implants.
And Jen, when they took yours out, that's what they looked like.
Yeah, you can see that right there in the top right. And that's the date I did it. So it'll be 5 years in November. So my implants were filled with betadine, right? I think betadine. Apparently in the 90s and early 2000s, sometimes doctors did that. So that's why they're that brownish color. And then that capsule I had mentioned a little bit earlier. So you want to make sure you get the capsule taken. So you can see how the breast tissue actually grew on, the implant. And then you'll notice the other pictures are the drains. So that was probably the worst part of the healing process. It really wasn't bad, but you do have to have the drains for at least 5 days. Yeah.
I remember when you got them out, Jen, and Megan was, happy for you and so hopeful that you would feel better. And then she showed me this picture and she goes, look, they're like mini pizzas.
Yeah. No, when I saw that picture, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I spent that many years, right, with that inside my body. Like I had a foreign object that looked like that, inside my body for that long. And it's frightening.
And how many women do you think you've talked to now? How many reach out to you? I've sent some your way. I know that.
I was going to say, I mean, I've spoken with hundreds of women. I mean, and that's not counting social media. And I mean, people DM me all the time. And I've had telephone calls with total strangers. It's so prevalent. I mean, think about, I remember we were in an office one time and there were 4 of us and 3 out of the 4 had breast implants and we all had like Crohn's and the other one had another autoimmune and then my stuff. And I was like, you guys, like, and I remember women saying like, oh, no, well, mine are fine. And then some of those women have told me since them getting, then they got them removed, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. Mm-hmm. At least once a week, sometimes multiple times a week, but at least once a week, I have the conversation about my breast implants.
Mm. Well, and I can remember right after you got them out, Jen, I remember this is probably the first time I talked to you after they were removed. Mm-hmm. And I was like dying to know if you felt better. Cause I was so, like Erin said, I was so hoping that you did, especially after I saw what came out. And I can remember you telling me that you used to have behind your ears, like it was raw and like crusty, inexplicably. Yeah. And it went away.
Guys, so much. I mean, I had like rashes. I would have rashes here. I mean, I have pictures on my website and like everything went away. Now, I will say there are some women who I know who I've, have relationships with who it's taken them longer for their symptoms to go away. Some certain ones haven't, but I would say 90% of the women who I speak with, a majority of their symptoms go away after they remove them. But I do credit, like, I cleaned up my diet. Like, it wasn't just like I was like, oh, here's my implants, just take them, I'm going to be 100% better. Like, you have to get your health back in place. You can't, just like I don't blame the plastic surgeon who I went to at all. I do not blame him. That was my decision. It's total accountability. On the same token, getting my health back wasn't just about going to, having surgery and getting my implants out. It was the whole thing. It was getting my body back to a place where it needed to.
It's about making room on that plate again, so that your body could, heal itself.
Yeah.
I feel like, I know you said there was a moment when implants were very popular in South Florida, and I do not know the Miami market at all, but it doesn't seem to me like fake boobs are as much of a thing as they were, though. Do you feel that way?
I mean, I definitely feel that way, but I don't know if that's because of the, like when you're into something where you're seeing something a lot, like, you see what you see.
Pregnant woman syndrome?
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it's, I would say probably not in like the early 2000s. No, I mean, most weather girls and traffic girls were stacked at a certain point in Miami.
For sure. And I can't even tell you, my boobs are real.
Megan was blessed with the real ones. The rest of us had to pay for them.
I was blessed with the real ones, but I will tell you, I have fielded, I can't even tell you how many emails in my life about, are those boobs fake? First of all, I'm not sure what entitles someone to ask you that question.
Nothing.
No.
Okay. But it is and was such a big thing. And to Jen's point, I think we've talked about this before, because in the Miami market, there's also English language and Spanish speaking stations. And a lot of people are bilingual. And so they have the choice to go to Telemundo or to one of the English language stations. And oftentimes the Spanish stations, I feel like they're very much about looking sexy, like really embracing like female, like just letting women feel sexy and be sexy on the air. But that then puts a little extra competition onto the English language stations down there. So I think that part feeds a little bit into it.
100%. It's a cultural thing. And in South Florida, we mentioned this earlier, Miami is such a unique place in a lot of different ways. And yes, you have the cultural influence, and Latin women for years have been encouraged to be voluptuous and sexy on air. And it was deemed completely unacceptable on the English stations until it wasn't. And then that's when you started to see that transition.
So Jen, tell us how to find your book, where it is.
So you can read Are Your Fake Boobs Making You Sick? Why I Went Back to a B cup. But in total honesty, it's more like an A.5. I'm always like, I should have put like an A cup because I'm not a full B. It is on Amazon. You can find it there. It's a quick read. It's 100 pages. And one thing I love best is there's like sections for journal entry. So you can kind of reflect, like if you've heard certain things or if you felt certain things, just so as you're reading, you can take notes and then look back at it. I always say it's not just a book about boobs. It's also a book about being a woman and going through some stuff and the struggle and raising kids and having a career and the importance of taking a look at your health, putting your health first. We talked about earlier about some setbacks career-wise, and I'm grateful for those because I had the time to kind of figure out what was going on with my health. And had I been, working steadily for all of those years straight without taking that little gap, I don't know that I would have figured it out. So, everything happens for a reason. And so it's a little, a little life story in there with some health, a lot I health stuff as well.
That's the point of what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's wild. It truly, like I said, I'm reminded every single day. And I also think it's important to talk about it because, Erin, I don't know if you have daughters. Do you have daughters?
One daughter. Yeah.
So Megan, I know you have girls. I have girls. My girls are teenagers now. I don't, not that I drill it in their heads, but it's talked about very openly in this house because I never want them to think that they need to alter their appearance in any sort of way. I mean, if it's medically necessary, that's one thing. But if we can just teach our girls to accept themselves and be okay with it through these teenage, right, and early 20 years, that they're going to be okay.
So important.
Great. Yeah, it's great.
We love you.
All right. We will add the link to your book in the description and comments, and also a link to your website so that people could reach out to you, Jen, if they have more questions.
Oh, please. Yes. 100%.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, Jen, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jen.